going in depth. This case has been simmering for years, but we're getting closer to that point where there will be a trial. So there are things happening. But when you look at this case, there are, as a former prosecutor, I look at it and I'm like, why did it take so long? And is there going to be enough here? And it's a story really of two best friends, these two young girls. And you know, teenage girls, they had a day off from school. You know, let's do this, we're on our phones, you know, we're going out. Pick us up later. Should have been extremely innocent. Should have been extremely safe. And you think you're safe because you're in Delphi, Indiana. This is a small, small town in middle America. But they weren't safe. And they didn't make it home that day. Now, part of what happened to them is they were catfished. Those of you who don't know what catfishing is, you're contacted or communicating with someone online, and they're pretending to be someone that they're not. You look at these pictures. The man on the left of the screen is a young male model. Has nothing to do with this case other than the fact that the guy on his right used his picture to entice young women. And it was an Instagram account that he had and other accounts that he set up under this name, Anthony Schatz. And on the day that they went missing and the day that they were murdered, Abby and Libby were communicating with someone from that account. Now, the guy on the right there, he got in big trouble for child pornography. He's not a good guy. So on the day that they're murdered, they're communicating with someone who's involved in the world of child pornography. Now, this case was unsolved for 5 years. And as we go through the information tonight and we go through some of the evidence during the course of this hour, from my perspective, it should not have been unsolved for 5 years. Could have been solved much quicker. How it wasn't, I don't understand. It was so high profile. And I know the investigators were absolutely dedicated to trying to get an answer. And there was pressure on them to get an answer. Because I've got to think, first of all, the families deserve that sense of justice. The victims do. But the community also wants to feel safe, like, hey, my kids can go outside and won't get murdered. But it didn't get solved for 5 years. And that's troubling, too, to me as a former prosecutor, because cases don't get better over time. They tend to get a little bit worse. And it also raises some doubt about, like, who actually committed this crime. Because, and we'll talk about it this hour, there are other suspicious people who popped up during the course of this investigation, including the man I just showed you before who was doing some catfishing. So the real question for me as this moves forward is, can they prove their case? Because you've got to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And while we can be convinced, ultimately it's the jury that has to be convinced by the evidence that is permitted by the rules of evidence. The jury doesn't get to see and hear everything that we get to see and hear. And there are some issues and there's some possibilities here that the defense can raise a doubt or give an alternative explanation or point the finger elsewhere to someone else who would be a reasonable suspect in this case. Now, for those of you who don't know this story, Matt Johnson, Court TV crime and justice correspondent, has more for us tonight.
Best friends 14-year-old Libby German and 13-year-old Abby Williams were dropped off for a walk at the Monon High Bridge Trail in Delphi, Indiana, and were never seen alive again.
They got out of my car. I made sure they both had sweatshirts. I told them goodbye. I told Libby I loved her. They walked out, and that was the last time I saw them.
They never showed up to be picked up, and the next day, February 14, 2017, search volunteers found the girls' bodies in the woods. The mystery of the so-called Delphi murders was a big story across the country, and investigators revealed very few clues, including possible suspect sketches and parts of a recording found on Libby's cell phone. Nearly 6 years had passed with no real leads. Then, in October of 2022, a break in the case, an arrest.
Today is not a day to celebrate, but the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder is sure a major step in leading to the conclusion of this long-term and complex investigation.
Police revealed their suspect had been living in plain sight all along. Richard Allen was a local husband and father, working as a farm tech in the town's CVS.
Now we have a person charged with it, right? We have a face, we have a name.
What would you say to Libby after you guys finally got this guy behind bars?
Oh, I believe that she helped lead them. I believe that she was steering all along. And I believe she's up there quite excited.
According to the probable cause affidavit, Allen placed himself on the trail when interviewed by police in 2017 and admitted to seeing the girls there. Police say an unspent round found near the girls' bodies went through a gun that belonged to Allen. And a witness allegedly placed a man who looked like Allen walking near the trail wearing muddy and bloody clothes.
It's scary just knowing that he was so close, and we had no idea.
Richard Allen has pleaded not guilty and denies any involvement in the murders of Libby and Abby.
So the defendant, the accused killer in this case, was in court today. We have some video, not from inside the courtroom, but of the arrival at the courthouse of Richard Allen. You can see him walk by there really quickly. We'll take another look. Doesn't look much like that mugshot anymore. Looks like he's dropped a lot of weight as well. It happens. It happens when you're locked up. So he was back in court today, so we have a lot to talk about. Joining me here in the studio tonight, investigative journalist Susan Hendricks. She is the author of the new book, Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi. Great to see you, Susan. Also with us tonight in Indianapolis, Indiana, the hosts of the Murder Sheet podcast, who were inside the courtroom today when Richard Allen showed up. Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee are with us. And in Salt Lake City, Utah, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, author of Deceived, Mike King. And in Los Angeles, California, body language expert, forensic psychiatrist, trial expert, witness, columnist, inside the criminal mind, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Great to see everyone tonight. I want to start with Anya and Kevin, who were there in the courtroom. Let's start here. Who was there at the courthouse today?
The families of the 2 victims were there. They're always kind of there bearing witness to what's happening in this case. You know, they're there to represent these 2 girls who they lost. And so that always adds a somber mood. We also saw Kathy, who is Richard Allen's wife. She was there seemingly to support her husband. And then, of course, the different parties, prosecutor Nick McClelland and the defense attorneys Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin.
So I just saw a glimpse in that video of Richard Allen. I don't know if I would have recognized him. How would you describe his appearance inside the courtroom today?
I was struck almost by how dazed and out of it he seemed. In his previous court appearances, when he's walked by where his wife is sitting, he typically has acknowledged her in some fashion, such as doing something like mouthing the words, "I love you." This time when he walked by his wife, I was watching him. He didn't make eye contact at all. He didn't even appear to see her or recognize that there was someone there.
Dr. Carol Lieberman, want to bring you in on that for a moment here. Someone accused of one of the most notorious crimes in the nation, went unsolved for 5 years, was living his life. All of a sudden, I guess, out of it now. Is reality setting in?
Well, you know, being in a prison for a while and not getting the greatest food and being isolated and dark and all of the conditions of jails and prisons do take their toll. I don't know, you know, one could speculate that, is he putting this on? I mean, supposedly there's a thought that his attorneys might ask to see whether he's competent to stand trial now. But I'm not sure that that's going to work because, I mean, everybody who is under these conditions could try for that.
All right, Anya and Kevin, so what was on the agenda today? What was the first big issue today in court?
The first thing that came up actually was that a number of documents in this case have been kept sealed for no apparent reason. We actually filed a motion with the court about that, saying, you need to follow proper procedure. You need to let these documents be open. And so when the judge came into court, the first thing she said was basically, you're right. And next week, a number of documents and filings that had previously been kept sealed will be made available to the public on a website.
That is huge. Susan Hendricks, what do you expect to find out when these documents now finally released? This has been, I mean, everyone's been very tight-lipped.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't learned a lot, little pieces here and there.
Tight-lipped. Even the family members, Vinny, as you know, have said to me through the years that they've been frustrated at the lack of information, but they put their trust fully in law enforcement, saying this is what we have to do. This is what they're saying. We're going to follow their lead to find out what happened here. But it's been, as you know, excruciating, as you would imagine, for the family members in dealing with this. And even this morning, texting with Becky, saying, look, we think that we're going to find out a lot of information today. And Kelsey, due in 8 weeks, having a baby girl, she was concerned about that. There's a lot of concern and apprehension about hearing this. And again, sometimes Kelsey has said to me through the years, look, there's a lot that I don't know, and some days I think maybe I don't want to know all of it. Maybe it's too much for me to handle. So putting the trust fully in law enforcement. And I'll never forget Becky saying, I can't wait to scream from the rooftops once someone is in custody. And then that day, finding out, she felt almost deflated, saying, what's my purpose now? I spent almost 6 years looking for someone. I had a purpose. And Mike said to me, Libby's grandfather, we have to kind of reset and decide what purpose we're going to focus on now. And Kelsey even saying, when I asked her before the arrest, how do you think this will be? And she said, I know it won't bring Libby back. I know it won't bring Abby back. It's kind of a new stage of grief, if you will, for the family. So I'm sure they want to hear that information, but they know that they're still without their loved ones.
Anya and Kevin, what sort of stuff do you expect to be released?
There's been all sorts of motions filed for things like motion for suppression. It'll be interesting to find out what exactly does the defense want to try to get suppressed from this trial. What arguments do they think they have to support that? That's something I'm very interested in.
Mike King, this case for years, unsolved, tight-lipped, and it seems like the information is going to start coming out. What are you most curious about at this point, having investigated cases like this?
Well, like Kevin said, Vinny, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they tried to suppress, because that's going to tip the hand of what they're really concerned about from an evidentiary standpoint. But it's also going to be what kind of evidence comes forward from these jailhouse discussions that are going on that are showing some really interesting things leading toward maybe admissions, possibly confessions. And it's going to be that bullet, and being able to put that bullet in the right place at the right time and explain that there's only one way that it could get there. So I think as this thing comes together, we're going to really see why it maybe took 5 years. And as frustrating as that is, I'm kind of glad that law enforcement holds so much to the vest. But it also shows me the power of this media community and this true crime community to force the hand to make law enforcement figure out how to deal with a true crime community that wants to help but needs to know what the boundaries are.
All right, Anya and Kevin, what else today? And Mike mentioned it. There was a lot of talk about a potential, if you want to call it a confession, admission, incriminating statements. What came up in court relative to that?
Yeah, absolutely. As Mike said, I mean, there was all this talk about possible multiple confessions to multiple people. And so, I mean, that is basically one point that prosecutor Nick McClelland drummed in again and again. You know, the defense sort of introduced the topic initially, and then prosecutor McClelland seemingly wanted nobody to forget that, essentially. And basically, we don't really know what exactly these sound like or look like. The defense downplayed it by saying basically these are incoherent statements. But the prosecution obviously took a different tack, and it makes us want to know more. Did these include details of the crime scene? Who is he speaking to, if anyone? How are these exactly picked up by prison officials? We really would like to know, because that could give us a better sense of this case.
Dr. Carol Lieberman, what are your thoughts about someone in custody charged with this notorious crime and allegations that they, at some point now, are making some incriminating statements? Would you find them trustworthy?
Well, you know, a lot of things could be causing this. Perhaps it has finally come to wear on him after all these years. Maybe he does really want to unburden his soul, you know, and confess. Could be that just, you know, all this, the conditions, as I was saying, you know, made him not think properly in terms of protecting himself. Also, you know, there's one of the other suspects, Kegan Klein, supposedly is working with prosecutors. And so he may well know some of the things that he's going to be saying and think that the jig is up.
So Anya and Kevin, what else today? Any other big moments, big issues from inside that courtroom?
Absolutely. One big issue today was due process. Basically, the defense is arguing that this man has not been convicted yet. He should not be held in a prison in Indiana. He should be held somewhere in a jail. And that doesn't really sound like a big difference to most people, but I think a prison is typically where people who are convicted are incarcerated, and they tend to be in some ways tougher. And then a jail, usually less resources because they're run at a county level. So there's this big dispute about where do we house this person? Because on the one hand, the prosecution and law enforcement are saying, we don't know if we can protect him in a jail, because people want to hurt people who hurt children in jails, and jails have less manpower. So it's just a situation where they're saying that. And then the defense is saying, well, conditions in Westville are very intense. He's, you know, being held in some isolation in a maximum security wing of this Westville prison, and he's isolated and his mental health is deteriorating. So those were kind of the two major sides of this as it came together in this hearing.
Yeah, neither place is a great place to be. But this, you know, is the nature of murder cases. It's interesting, though, that it seems the state wants to make sure that he is safe, and they put him in a prison because we've seen what happens in jails. I don't know. Do we have a trial date?
Yes. I believe they've set it for sometime in January 2024.
Yeah, January 8th, 2024, and they estimate it's going to run for a total of 3 weeks, and they're going to allow several days for jury selection in the beginning.
They may need a few more days for jury selection. Well, it all depends on the judge. I know that. All right. Incredible panel tonight. Everyone's staying with us. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some of the evidence against this accused. Plus, coming up next hour. In Fremont County, Idaho, the doomsday cult killer Lori Daybell back in court after her conviction as she prepares for sentencing and tries to get a new trial.
So while a juror may have said something that conflated those two terms, the question is whether or not the court can even go there and consider what the juror may have said or understood.
Over $27,000 worth of stolen reptiles. And a teenager fatally shot.
William Zelensky, owner of Wild Bill's Exotic, stands accused of killing his girlfriend's son.
The alleged motive, snakes and a crocodile stolen from the defendant.
We're taking you inside the courtroom as this shocking case unfolds.
The stolen reptile murder trial. Live coverage starting Monday morning at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Investigators say marks on a single bullet found near the bodies tie Allen to the killings of the girls. Court documents state several witnesses say they saw Allen on the Monon High Bridge around the time the girls disappeared. The documents detail an interview police had with Allen back in 2017, where he told investigators he was on the trail from 1:30 to 3:30 that day. Surveillance video shows a car matching Allen's in the area at the time of the crime. Court documents state the video Libby took on her phone shows Abby walking on the Monon High Bridge when a man wearing a dark jacket and jeans walks behind her. They go on to say one of the girls mentions gun before being told, "Guys, down the hill." That audio was later released to help with the investigation. Documents say the video ends shortly after the girls start to walk down the hill. Allen was interviewed a second time last month, where he told investigators he was on the trail that day wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with the hood. Documents say during a search at Allen's home, police found clothing that matches what was worn by the alleged killer. They also found a gun that belonged to Allen. Analysis on that gun found the bullet found near the girls' bodies had been inside Allen's gun. Allen told police he never let anyone borrow it. What we still don't know is how the two teens died.
We did learn a lot from the probable cause affidavit, and I want to put that up because I think it's so significant here as you try to figure out the evidence that prosecutors have against Richard Allen. Now, this is the one that, again, this just blows my mind. Investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who interviewed Richard Allen in 2017. Allen said he was on the trail between 13:30 and 15:30. He saw 3 females while he was there. He did not remember description. He did not speak with them. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. So he puts himself there. How many other men were there that day? How many other men were there that day? Then, flash forward, October 13th, 2022, Richard Allen was interviewed again by investigators. And again, he advised, yeah, I was on the trail, February 13th, 2017. Then he told investigators he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. He advised he may have been wearing some sort of a head covering as well. First of all, who remembers what they were wearing how many years ago? 5 years ago. Come on, this is bizarre. Unbelievable guests tonight. Let's bring him back in. Mike King, I'm going to you first. Like, someone wrote this down, right? An officer, he may not have been a police officer, a conservation officer, whatever he was. Like, how does that tip get buried in the highest profile case that will ever come out of Delphi, Indiana? It has a man, it puts a man there. And all you have to, well, what did he look like? Oh, kind of like the guy in the video.
I'm with you on this one, Vinny. It drove me crazy when I read that part of it. Not only that he's wearing the same kind of clothes, but that he's admitting to being there, and he's admitting to walking down with something over his face and looking at his phone, fitting exactly the testimony that was given by those eyewitnesses that saw somebody on the trail appeared to be looking down. This thing is really going to be interesting to find out how much they knew. And, you know, I gotta give a little bit of slack to law enforcement, because sometimes you have a real good idea of who's responsible for a murder, but you only get one shot in court. So you take your time and line the ducks up.
I don't know. Susan, I have my own theory here. That tip, I think, got lost or buried. I don't know how it gets buried, because how many tips did they have about people who were actually there at the time, especially a man, right? I mean, I think we were suspecting a man all along because they have a video of a man.
Yeah. And that April 22nd press conference where Superintendent Doug Carter said, we're changing direction. We believe you're hiding in plain sight. We believe you're from Delphi or have worked here for a long period of time. I interviewed the superintendent on the day of the arrest, or the final press conference, and I said, you were right on at that press conference. And of course, he couldn't elaborate to that. But then that sketch of the much younger person came about. Exactly. He came forward, and now we're wondering, what is this clerical error? Because they won't elaborate on that either. And the FBI is saying, they came out and said, look, it's not us with this clerical error. we did not do this, we're not responsible for it. So maybe this will come out in the future in terms of what finally led to this arrest. And as you mentioned, Vinny, the tips, I believe that the officers and law enforcement, again, trying their best. And as Mike said, it's difficult, you know, no priors. This person never allegedly had committed a crime before, as far as they know. So who is it? Even though it's a small town, 3,000, 1,500 men.
I know, but shouldn't there be like a working list of who was there that day? Right? And this is someone who put himself there.
Somebody messed up, but we don't know who it is.
I think it's, but we'll find out. Anya, Kevin, what do you say on this issue?
Yeah, it's a really baffling aspect of this whole thing, because I think as the other guests have said, when you hear there's a man placing himself there wearing a similar outfit, you know, all of us are screaming, what? Like, talk to that person. I know when we kind of asked around, we kind of got a sense that there was some clerical error at the heart of this issue. And I mean, that's unfortunate, but I think it speaks to, you know, there can be human errors. I mean, investigators are human beings. This is a very complex and long investigation involving multiple agencies. And I think we can all see where maybe, unfortunately and tragically, something unfortunately snowballs into a you know, just a longer wait for these families. And it's very unfortunate, but I guess I could see it happening.
But even the officer who took the original statement, I mean, even if you're not an FBI, you're not part of the sheriff's office or whatever, like after a while, would you make a call or be a little curious? Hey, whatever happened? Did you guys ever follow up with the guy I talked to who looks like that video you released, who said he was there that day? But no, I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Okay, let's take a look at more from the probable cause affidavit. Witnesses saw an individual who matches Allen's description that day. Allen admitted walking the trails that day. Vehicle matching Allen's is seen on surveillance. This is a key one. The unspent round located 2 feet from the victim's body had been cycled through Allen's Sig Sauer model P226. Mike King, can you put that in English for us, please?
Yeah, so when they're talking about cycling through, Vinny, they're saying that that round was inside the chamber. It makes me wonder, and I'd love to know more about the forensics on this one, to see if there actually is a pin that hit on that firing cap and it misfired, and that he made a manual extraction of that round at the scene. We're not going to know, because we still don't know what the total injuries were on these children and what the situation was around the other forensic and physical evidence. But when that round is being pulled out of that magazine, it scrapes along the sides of that and leaves very intricate cuts and grooves inside of that casing as it comes out, almost like a fingerprint. And law enforcement can match that up perfectly and say, there is no way it came from anywhere else but this weapon owned by Allen.
Susan, how is the family preparing for the trial? Do they have someone, advocates that they're working with that are going to help them? Because the one thing, once the trial starts, you and I know through the years, you don't know how it's going to end.
Right.
And they've got to prepare for everything and for all these moments. It's a roller coaster of emotions. It's brutal. They're going to see and hear things like...
Excellent point. And Paul Holes, former cold case investigator, Golden State Killer, connected to solving that, has said to the families, look, I've learned through experience, this is just the beginning. There's ups and downs of this trial. And in a way, they've been their own advocates. And as I said, the relationship has been good with law enforcement. But they have been frustrated through the years. I remember it was 2020, and Mike Patty said to me, you know, Susan, they owe me an arrest. They owe me this because of everything that the girls did that day, saying Libby did her part. She hit record. We have his voice. We have him walking. We have a blurry picture of him. But come on, you know, there's 1,500 men in the town of Delphi, and you believe he's from there. And I've been down at the bridge, and once you're there, and I believe that Anya and Kevin were there as well. Once you go down there, you realize how long it takes to get there, and you realize, okay, probably a local. So it's frustrating, of course, to the family members. But they said, look, no matter what, we're going to the trial. This is what we've been looking forward to in terms of justice. And Kelsey did say, look, I wish this never happened. It did. I have to go to this and be there. So they've been supporting each other throughout.
All right. All our guests are staying with us. When we come back, 5 years, there are other suspicious people who've been on the radar. We're going to take a look at them and try to figure out what role they may play as this trial moves closer.
I started hearing these stories about murder and stuff.
I'm about to be the biggest drug dealer that you can become.
Oh my God, are they starting a war with me or what?
I'm not gonna lie, it felt good to be a gangster.
She just points the gun at my face.
Boom, 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 boom.
Just shoots me.
We knew that what we were doing had consequences, but we just didn't care.
Vice on Court TV. Weeknights at 7, 6 Central. Only on Court TV.
Downhill.
Guys.
Downhill.
Guys.
Downhill.
This was the video that we watched thousands of times, looking for who is that guy? That was the murderer, and you know, this is a case where there were other people that were on the radar before Richard Allen. Richard Allen was not on the radar before he was arrested. Like, nobody heard of him until he got arrested, unless, you know, you're getting pictures developed at CVS and Delphi. So take a look. So you got Richard Allen all the way on your left. He is the defendant. In the middle, the man I talked about at the top of the hour, who was catfishing these girls and others with that Instagram account. His name is Kegan Klein. And then you got Ron Logan on the right. He's the property owner who lied about where he was that day. So, you know, you're lying about where you are at the time that all this is happening and the bodies are found on your property. That's pretty darn suspicious. You are, the account you created to entice little girls, and someone on that account is communicating with these girls on the day that they disappear and get murdered. That makes you suspicious as well. So let's take a look first at Richard Allen next to the images that we looked at throughout, right? So there it is, the down the hill guy on the left, the sketch, one of two sketches that we saw, that's in the middle, and then you have Richard Allen on the right. And I look at that, Dr. Carol Lieberman, and I see a match.
Yes. You know, if I were in this family, I would be so incredibly frustrated. I don't know what else they need. You know, they have the pictures, the sketches, they have the photograph, they have the voice. I mean, and with forensics these days, the photograph and the voice can be really linked to him. He admits that he was wearing those clothes. He admits that he was there. His car was there. You know, in fact, they also found cat hairs on the girls, and they dug up his cat and they matched. So what else do you need? And then, of course, we have his little friends. And this was supposed to be one theory, and I think it makes a lot of sense, that this was a botched child sex kidnapping. He was supposed to kidnap the girls and bring them to Ronald Logan's house, and then the catfisher was supposed to join them, and they were going to have sex and take photographs for pornography and all of that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's just so frustrating. I don't know, you know, are they waiting for, I don't know what more I mean, the confession actually is if he continues to confess, or if it is a valid confession, that is the final, cherry on top.
Yeah, and to this point, like we said, Ronald Logan passed away. He was never charged. Kegan Klein not charged relative to this. He has other charges. Let's take a look at Kegan Klein next to the sketch and the down the hill video man. As we take a look at these pictures next to each other, is that a match? So, you know, arguably you could say, yeah, maybe if he cut a few pounds, because this is years later. Kegan Klein did a jailhouse interview with Anya and Kevin from the Murder Sheet podcast, which you need to download, by the way. Let's take a listen to a little piece of that.
I'm just curious, did you know Richard Allen?
No.
Okay.
No. People said that he worked in Peru or lived in Peru around whatever year. I can't remember, but someone on some podcast was saying, oh, well, he lived right down the road from him in 2004. It's like, dude, I was 9 or 10 years old. Why would I know a grown man? You know, things like that.
I mean, I guess, is there anything you wanted to state for the record, or anything about some, the coverage, or that you would want the public to know?
When I get to prison, I definitely will send you a letter, because I want to talk about some of the Delphi stuff. But right now, I don't think that would be smart to do.
Okay.
After I'm sentenced, you know what I mean? Yeah, I would like to say a few things for sure about that.
Anya and Kevin, so at this point, we still don't believe that he's necessarily going to be a witness in the case against Richard Allen. He says he doesn't even know him, and we haven't heard anything in court about any sort of deal to testify, have we?
No, we have not. There's really been no indication thus far that there's any real overlap between these two cases at this time, at least in the official record in court. And so unless there starts to be something going on behind the scenes, we wouldn't really expect that at this point. He's actually awaiting sentencing now after sort of a dramatic, he confessed to crimes, basically 25 counts, pled guilty, seemingly was trying to undo that, and now he's pleading guilty again. So he's awaiting sentencing, and we're certainly interested in what he has to say about Delphi, given that it seems that his crimes were uncovered due to the Delphi investigation. But until there's an actual link presented in the case against Richard Allen, we're sort of looking at it as a separate thing at this point.
Okay, so let's focus now on Ronald Logan. We'll take a look at his photo next to the sketch, next to the down the hill guy. There you go. Probably he looks a little thinner, but kind of the same sort of build. And again, his property was searched, and he contacted his cousin and asked him to tell the police or to lie to police about where he was that day. So he's trying to create an alibi for the day. Makes him extremely suspicious. Something else. Now, you see it right there, he's wearing orange, right? Let's take a look at what he looked like the day afterwards, because he was interviewed by police. Susan Hendricks, I look at this and I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah. Like, he's wearing the same color hat. He's wearing the same color jacket. This is the day after. He just happens to be interviewed because he lives nearby where this all happened. Yeah. What are your thoughts about Ronald Logan?
On the set of HLN, I interviewed Ron Logan that next day. I think he was doing a lot of interviews. Of course, it's his property, right? So they're going to look at him first. What was telling to me, Vinny, is that he was never charged. But it's easy to fill in the blanks with all of this information, because they wouldn't even, law enforcement, rule anyone out. Even the family members, even Sheriff at the time, Tobe Lesenby, said, I was interviewed twice. Even Mike Patty, I was interviewed. They expected that, right? Everyone in this small town. But they never said, law enforcement, Ron Logan absolutely did not do this, because they said it's sealed, everything's sealed. They may be a person of interest. I think what was telling is the fact that he was never charged with these murders. And maybe, I know that is suspicious, the lying of the alibi. Maybe it was about the trouble he had gotten in before. Then I met him in 2019. I was just coming from the bridge, and he said, police ruined my life. He was outside of his house. They arrested me, and people came into my house and stole stuff from me. He was obviously upset. And I remember it being 9 degrees that day, freezing. And he said, police ruined my life. So maybe it had been something else, that he was lying in terms of his alibi for that day. So when you're not told anything by law enforcement, if everything's sealed, of course you're going to say, well, this could have easily happened, right? And filled in the blanks here. It's bizarre.
Extremely bizarre. Anya Kane, Kevin Green, Lee, what about Ron Logan? Bottom line with him.
I think Susan said it so well about how when there is a lack of information from law enforcement, it is so easy to fill in the blanks. One thing I think is indicated to us by some of the documents that have come out on the case is just that I think he was a focus in March of 2017. And I think they did really put in good efforts trying to see if they could uncover anything there. And I think if they had found evidence or it had been a good case, he would have been charged, and we wouldn't have waited so long for what happened with Richard Allen. So I tend to think that the due diligence was done, and then he was moved on from at some point.
Mike King, we have less than a minute here. I look at these two men, right? Logan and Kegan Klein, and I think the defense will make them, or attempt to make them, a part of this case, and the prosecution will try to dismiss them as quickly as possible.
I agree with you, Vinny, and I think this is going to be really a case that boils down to what forensics they've collected, digital forensics off of those individuals. Is there communication that was going on through this web where they're catfishing, where they connected that way, but they didn't know each other by name? All of that, I believe, will come out, and there are capabilities to do that. I just got to keep going back to the prosecution has to remind everybody, he said he was there. A bullet from his gun was found next to the children, and he was walking with a mask.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Great job tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Susan Hendricks, Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee, a Murder Sheet podcast. Susan Hendricks, great new book. Mike King, thank you. And Dr. Carol Liebman, we'll see you again really, really soon.